Hello, and welcome to the What If South is Up podcast, where we talk about the ups and downs of creating worlds from scratch and all the misadventures we experience along the way. In a nutshell, how to wing it like an author. I'm Derrick Hall, creator of the Crimson Prophecy series, and we're getting very close to launch of Book 1 here in November, and we're super excited about that. And why am I speaking in the third person, plural?
I'm excited about it too. You're fine.
Okay, we'll roll with it.
I am Xtina, Xtina Lefebvre, and in the middle of writing my very first book. So, Derrick has one up on me, but I'll catch up soon enough. And my book series, the first book is going to be called... Okay, I can't say that. I can tell you, the first book's working title is Cogs and Arrows. I might change my mind when it's published. But anyways, let's move forward.
Oh, Xtina, what are you reading or watching this week? Anything interesting?
I'm trying to work my way through The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. I started it a few months ago, and I'd really like to get through it because it's got a lot of things in there that are Native American, indigenous, cultural things that I'd like to see or read about. And I just purchased Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree because it was suggested to me by one of the podcasters that I listen to.
That's always fun. So, I have managed to finish the latest He Who Fights with Monsters, and now I have to wait, which is unfortunate, because I'm addicted. I think I've said that every week to this point. I am addicted. But I've managed to finish that, and have managed to finish Hitler's Last Witness. So I'm moving on the nonfiction side to The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Schreier. And on the fiction side, I'm moving into starting Will White's Cradle Collection, which is quite this, collection of books. I think there's 7 or 8 of them at this point. But that should keep me in books for a while.
It sounds like
no waiting.
That sounds like a deep dive into a lot of things.
Yeah, it is. It is. All the World War II stuff is research for an upcoming project that shall remain nameless, and fiction is because I love fiction.
Well, and as writers, we're supposed to read as much as we can. So.
Oh, supposed to is
a bad word.
A bit strong, but it is highly recommended. That's honestly how I've developed both my style and a large portion of my story, because I'm a nerd, and if you pay attention to the book coming out, there are lots of little nerdy references. Teaser.
Well, one of my biggest problems about reading is I actually have narcolepsy, so I fall asleep reading books. So I can get through, books a snippet at a time. But most of my learning about stories and plot and the type of thing is through movies.
Yeah, that's fair. I love movies too. I watch lots of movies. I think we went into a little bit of a mini movie review last week. Maybe we'll do that again. I don't know.
We'll see where the whim takes us.
It depends on which way the rabbit hole turns. But, my nonfiction reading is typically in the morning, usually with breakfast, and then my fiction reading is at night in the dark in bed, so I end up falling asleep in the middle of that. I usually get 8 or 10 chapters down before that happens, because I am nocturnal, apparently, and refuse to sleep unless I put myself to sleep.
I'm just a natural night owl. That's I always have been.
And that is completely fair. I'm the same way.
I still totally believe that back in the Neanderthal days, caveman days, they needed the person to wake up in the morning and, do all the breakfast cooking and get everybody else up. But they also needed that one person that could stay up all night and watch out for wolves or coyotes or other monsters. And that would have been my ancestor.
Exactly. Yeah, I can easily stay up all night, but I cannot sleep during the day.
Oh, my narcolepsy. If I lay down prone for 3 minutes, I'll be asleep and snoring.
Of which, as weird as it sounds, I am jealous. I cannot sleep if it is daylight outside. I don't care how dark the room is. Unless I am completely and utterly exhausted, I cannot sleep during the
I
day.
have no problem with that. I will sleep all the sleep for you. How's that sound?
Oh, yes, please do. Send some of the rest my way, too.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Moving to our next question. What are you drinking today?
Me, I am drinking a dry, unfiltered, hard cider. It's
Okay.
from Champlain Orchards. It's a Vermont brewer. It is a bone dry cider, so there is no sweetness to this whatsoever. I like it because it's lighter than a beer, and I don't have to mix anything. And I just like a really good hard cider.
I enjoy a good cider, too. I have a personal invention, born of necessity when I needed a drink and there wasn't much in the house. I call it a Neapolitan, not to be confused with the actual drink called a Neapolitan, but it is homemade chocolate Kahlua, courtesy of my mother, tequila rose, and milk. And when you pour it, it layers out chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, like Neapolitan ice cream.
That sounds
And when you mix it
really good.
and drink it, it is really good. When you drink it, it tastes like melted Neapolitan ice cream. And it is absolutely delicious.
I will have to jot that down and remember it for future reference.
Good luck finding good chocolate Kahlua, though.
I would think that any chocolate liqueur would work, don't you?
Probably. This is a chocolate. It's chocolate and coffee. Mm-hmm. So you could do probably like a straight chocolate liqueur and then just a little bit of Kahlua or a coffee liqueur, like half and half on a shot when you mix it. That would probably do it too, but I've never tried that. I'm just lucky enough to have this delicious homemade stuff that's been stewing for like 4 years in my cabinet and just getting stronger and stronger, and the flavors are all... Oh, yeah. Okay, I just gave myself chills. Let's move on. The thing that we usually do next is we play a little bit of a game. What we like to do is roll a d20, which is a 20-sided die for those who aren't familiar, and we have a list of 20 what-if questions. We roll live during the show and pick a topic to which we will apply to our specific worlds that we created and talk about it. It's a rabbit hole, it goes weird places, but we have a lot of fun with it. Are you ready for this week's topic?
Let her roll.
Number 12. What if humans, or your primary/dominant race, were at the bottom of the food chain?
Well, that question kind of implies that they're currently at the top, right?
Theoretically, yes.
I don't think humans are at the top of the food chain. No, I mean, a little tiny bacteria can kill us.
That's fair.
Also,
it's a slow burn, though.
Also, if you were to throw a human inside of a shark tank with a shark, the human's not at the top of the food chain there.
That is an extreme circumstance, my friend. Sometimes if you throw them in a shark tank, they come out with an investment deal. So, you know...
Oh, only if they have good presentation.
I think the drink is working.
Okay, so what happens if there are things in the world that can kill your primary species? And they do it all the time.
Yes. Let me rephrase it this way. What if being eaten is a constant and verifiable threat against your main character?
Interesting.
I went first last week. This is on you.
That's not fair. I didn't say that was with the rules. Well, first of all, my main character, Iniksha, is a human who lives in, when it starts the story, in a very remote part of Alaska. So I would almost argue that on some level they are concerned about being eaten, but it's not something that's normal and happens every day. So what would have to happen in my world to make it so that's something that is common occurrence?
Mm-hmm.
I think that in my world, if my humans were, or my people, all the people, were vulnerable to beast attack and getting eaten all the time, I think it'd actually bring them closer together in a community. I think it would affect their life in the village. I think it would actually bring back. I am hypothesizing that my people have evolved to the point where they don't have hunters specifically versus gatherers versus other types of people in the village. So first of all, if they were getting eaten all the time, I think they would regress and have, very specific hunters whose job it is to protect that village from those beasts.
Yes, I would agree with
I
that.
also think they wouldn't be as advanced in their technology because they had to spend so much of their technology and their brains protecting themselves from the beast. And I also believe that my people would not just go out and indiscriminately kill the beasts because they believe that all life is precious.
Right.
But yeah, I think that their technology would have regressed or be regressed. It wouldn't be as advanced as it is now. And I don't think there'd be as much opportunity for people to go into fields such as science and philosophy and art like they can in this world. So other than getting eaten, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, I think in most cases, being afraid constantly of being eaten is a bad idea. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think, too, in your world in particular, it would probably draw the community closer together into more of like a fort situation or like a walled compound to try to keep some of those threats out.
And so their mode of transportation would be different because going from village to village, in the wintertime, of course, they use dogs and sleds.
Oh, so Meals on Wheels.
For the beast, it is.
Yes.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, I think it would change a lot, honestly. In my world, I don't think it would really change as much, mostly because my world is not technologically advanced, quite like yours is. It's more of a traditional medieval setting. So there's not a huge amount of travel between cities or towns or villages or that sort of thing that's not done by sea. The majority of trade is conducted by sea with ships and rivers, that sort of thing. A lot of the cities and towns are already walled. There are like little farms and that sort of thing that are independent and kind of out on their own, and it would be a threat to them, but I could see them just building up sort of a little walled frontier fort sort of situation around their, house, barn, and livestock pens. And if the crops get taken, that sort of thing. But if something's going to eat you, it's probably not going to come for your barley.
Right. I don't think it would.
So that's less of a concern, yeah. Other than something maybe getting trampled or rooted around in, that sort of thing.
What if your predators were kraken or something seafaring?
If something was seafaring, it would be a very different story. Your trade would have to move from seagoing vessels, ships and barges and that sort of thing, to overland trade. So you're bringing in something like caravans or wagon trains or something like that. And it's a big enough place that that's going to slow things down a lot. It's going to slow things down. It's going to add more cost, more expense, more danger from other elements like exposure and bandits. And the pirates aren't just going to give up. They're going to move inland and turn into brigands and bandits. And you're going to end up with a traditional medieval highwayman kind of situation. So that has its own problems. But yes, if it was something ocean going, a lot would change. Because the majority of the population is situated along the coastline, I feel like a fair number of people who had no reason to stay in the established cities, which would be vulnerable to something like a kraken, being right on the coastline with ports and that sort of thing, would probably move inland and create new population centers, and the whole face of the continent would change.
So let's talk a little bit about how that would affect the personal identity of the people. If you, up till now, believed, like most humans believe, not all, but most humans believe they're the top predator, right? That they've reached the top of the food chain. If you suddenly weren't, how would that change your community's identity? If one day you were king of hunting and the next day you were the hunted.
I'm going to recommend that people go read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park. That will answer that question very well. Yes, clearly this is something people to put a lot of thought into, because if you're suddenly no longer top dog, that is a big deal.
That changes a lot. I mean,
it really
if
does.
You're suddenly not top dog, you're no longer worried about getting the barley in the house, right?
Right, exactly. As far as my world goes, if that were the situation, I think I think on some level it would affect the general culture in as far as their priorities. So you're going to have a higher priority on fighters, hunters, more priority on defenses and having a defensible position. Your average town is going to look more like a military camp or a fort than a collection of houses and barns in the middle of the plains. Is not going to be a collection of houses and barns in the middle of the plains. It's going to have a wall around it. And there will be people guarding that wall. You will probably have people scouting for whatever creature is afoot, that sort of thing. If you're on the coastline, you're going to have people watching the water, making sure that nothing is coming. Anything you can do basically to get an early warning that Big Bad is hungry and on its way. Which, for a more direct effect on the people themselves, it's going to have a different, it's going to create a different mentality. So very much like if you look at Athens and Sparta, Athens was a much more culturally focused society dealing with arts and philosophy and astronomy and that sort of thing. And Sparta was to the bone a military culture. From 7 years old, they were trained to fight. This is how you end up with, the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae being able to hold off however many, I think it was Persians in that case. But, and forgive me if my history is wrong, but it's going to create a very different mindset. If you're constantly on the defensive, your culture is going to shift to promote the defensive as important. If you are not constantly on the defensive, the culture, much like you said, has room to branch out into other things. You end up with artists and sculptors and philosophers and scientists and things like that. And it's very much an Athens and Sparta contrast if you actually stop and look at it.
So I'm thinking about my world, and my BBEG, my big, bad, evil guy, believes in manifest destiny. And he believes, because where he came from, that he is the top of the food chain personally, and he deserves everything that
Humble,
he wants.
isn't he?
Yeah. So if he suddenly learned that he was somebody's kibble, I think he might do something stupid and try to kill it, and he would die.
Probably.
Anisha, my MC, I think she would be respectfully humbled by it and not try to overcome the predator or whatever it is. If I'm talking about if this happens suddenly. Right. But yeah, my big bad evil guy, I think he'd do something stupid.
I mean that would make sense.
Yep.
My BBEG from book 1 would also do something very brash and get a lot of people killed. She is not known for her humility and is not known to take advice from anyone and is not known to play well with others. So she would definitely do something stupid, try to attack it, try to kill it, try to whatever. Assuming we're talking about some monumental beast that, if we're dealing with like a kaiju situation,
yep.
Yeah, she's going to do something stupid and she's going to fail. Whereas my MC she can be very impulsive and brash. Maybe brash isn't the word, but definitely impulsive and reckless. Reckless is the word I want. But that impulsivity and recklessness comes from age and lack of experience more than arrogance. She will see something and know that she can't kill it. She will probably go find it first, but when she sees it, she will know she can't kill it and stop and rethink what's going on. So she's not stupid enough to go into that fight.
Well, that's good.
Or arrogant enough to go into that fight, as the case may be, because BBEG was not stupid, she was just arrogant.
It's sort of like mine.
That's fair. I feel like a lot of villains are very arrogant. Even though I don't know that villain is the proper term for this particular character, but BBEG will work. The beg. Beg.
If they're not the top of the food chain anymore and something came along and was the top of the food chain now, their food source would be affected because they hunt for food, right? They eat elk, seal, and animal stuff. So that could cause a problem because the food chain is completely interrupted.
Yes. Yes, that would be a thing. I think cultures in general would probably become a lot more dependent on livestock that they could defend.
Yes, yours. Mine doesn't have livestock at all.
Well, good luck with that. I think mine would become a lot more dependent on livestock. If it's something land-based, it'd probably become a lot more dependent on fish. If it's something water-based, yes, livestock. And if it's water-based, I also don't think that would really affect the land-bound game supply as much as it would pretty much cancel out fishing as an industry.
Well, what would happen in the villages or in the communities is people would die of starvation.
Yeah, until they figured it out, that would definitely be an issue. As far as your world goes, if you're dealing with something land-based, you're kind of SOL, unless you figure something out or move into a herding sort of culture and start dealing with livestock, because that is a reliable food source that can be defended.
Yeah, but bringing livestock into a community changes the community.
It does a lot.
A lot, because now you have to feed those beasts. You have to feed them. You have to make sure that they have space to poop, and then you got to clean it or whatever you got to do with it. That's a total shift. Something like that would not happen in a single generation.
No, it would not. At that point, at least in your world, you're already looking at moving into like a walled fort community sort of thing. If you bring livestock into that mix and have to defend it, your walls will have to get exponentially larger so that you have room for the livestock, room for them to move around so they're not just packed in like sardines. And then beyond that, if you want them to go out and graze, you're going to have trained fighters who can defend that food source to go out with them as shepherds or ranchers or cowboys, for lack of a better term.
Okay, then. So, no carnivore eating beasts that are bigger than my people. Got it.
Unless you want to start world building from the ground up, don't do that.
Yeah, let's do that in my next book, not this one.
I don't know if you want to do it in the next one either, because it'll kind of retcon the first one. Unless you want to go into all the details of rebuilding a society from ground up.
I do not.
Me neither.
That is not my thing. That is not my shtick.
I feel like my world is a lot more flexible for things like that, and I still don't want to do it. All right. The next thing that we like to do is talk about any interesting things that we have had to search on the internet. Writing a novel is really hard work. We both know that. We've just bemoaning the fact of how much work we would have to do if we added some of these what-ifs to our world. It's very complex, and we very often end up Googling or searching funny, embarrassing, or scary things, or even things that I'm pretty sure have landed us on the FBI watch list. Sometimes it's just a random rabbit hole. Christina, do you have anything interesting this week?
So, because we're doing this, I went back through my Google search history and tried to, see what are some of the things that I've searched through a little while. I will admit that my number one Google search is, what time does the liquor store close today?
That feels appropriate.
So, barring that, something that was interesting is I was watching a TikTok, and I saw somebody use some kind of liquid element, something they put into a lock, and it dissolved the lock into dust. Mm-hmm. It made it, they tapped and it turned into dust. Well, I couldn't find the TikTok video, so then I started looking for compounds that dissolves aluminum, and I couldn't find it. That didn't really take me down a rabbit hole. That made me stop looking because I couldn't find it. But I would like to know what that compound was, because I'm going to use it in my story. I just have to now find it. Other than that, you have those moments when you can't remember that word. You need that word. You can't figure out that word. I asked Google, what's the website for video meetings? How dumb can you be at a moment's notice? But even sometimes Google searches, we're looking for things we just can't remember the specific word.
Yeah, exactly. I have lots of random things. Nothing particularly book-related, other than that I was having to describe, about a week ago, I think it was, I was working on my book and having to describe a library. The libraries in my world, at least the two that I've had to describe, there's one in book 1 and another in book 2. They're similar yet different. They're essentially like a pocket dimension, if you will. They're magical things that you can put on any wall, a little token about 2 inches across. Wow. You can put it against a wall, feed a little bit of magic into it, and it will grow into a doorway, and you walk through it, and it is a library.
Yep.
Which is super awesome when you need to research something at a moment's notice. But I had to describe the inside of this little pocket dimension. And the image that kept coming to mind was like, the library from Beauty and the Beast, or like traditional European, like 1700s, 1800s style fancy libraries with the huge bookshelves and the rolling ladders and the balconies and all that stuff. I didn't want it to be that fancy. So I was basically digging through images of old libraries, looking for something, anything to try to inspire this space that I had to describe in enough detail that I could effectively place my characters in it. And I eventually found what I was looking for, but in the process of that, I found a YouTube black hole. I am notorious for these. Most people who spend any amount of time on YouTube are notorious for these. But I play D&D, I build models for D&D, I paint miniatures, I do all of that sort of stuff. I have dabbled in building miniatures from scratch, similar to what they do for movies and that sort of thing. Adam Savage is a fantastic resource for specifically building props and miniatures for movies, because that's what he did for years before he ended up on Mythbusters. But I found a channel, and I don't remember the exact name of the channel. I believe it's Nerdforge.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a girl from Norway who builds nerdy things. She customizes book covers to make them look like spell books and things like that. She builds miniatures for D&D, for other things. She does all sorts of things, but she had one where she made a book nook. I don't know if you've heard of these. It's a little miniature world that fits on your bookshelf in between your books. She has made several of them, and they are all absolutely stunning. I spent about half of today just watching her make things and going, I need that.
Oh, yeah.
But one of them in particular ended up in my watch later list because I found it on this library search. She made a miniature library with lit, glowing torches and infinity mirrors, so it looks like it goes on forever, that fits in a bookshelf between the books. It's gorgeous. And she had a little bit of trickery and that sort of thing. Like the flame effect on the torches was old theater effect that they would use for like ghosts and that sort of thing. Pepper's Ghost, which involves an angled piece of clear glass and a reflection from a side that is redirected out toward the viewer.
Yep.
It's an illusion. But she set it up to where she could put her phone on one side with this little torch animation on it, and it lined up perfectly with these little glass orbs that were lit with LEDs, but then the flame superimposed over them because of the reflection and the illusion. They looked like they were on fire. It was absolutely amazing, and I'm like, I need to build that. I'm gonna build that. I'm really gonna build that.
I might have seen it.
You might have, I don't know, but she did that one. She did one with a bunch of the shops from Diagon Alley in Harry Potter. Did one that was like an elvish village from Lord of the Rings, that sort of thing. And they're all just kind of tucked into like a little spot in your bookshelf where if you're not looking for it, you're going to miss it. And it was absolutely astounding. I will try to put it in the show notes if I remember.
So one thing I wanted to say about your library.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the 15th century, I think it is, books in libraries were actually stored with the spine backward, and the pages, the paper pages edge was written with the title, because the spines could not be pulled. If you pulled on them, they would break and get damaged. That would be an interesting detail.
That is correct.
That would be an interesting detail to add.
It really could be. I didn't go quite that far. I made it slightly more modern than that, but my world doesn't have a printing press, so all the books are handwritten, hand copied, hand illustrated.
Which is the books I'm talking about, prior to Gutenberg.
Yeah, exactly. And they're also interspersed, probably about 70-30 books with scrolls.
Oh.
There's a fair number of scrolls that still exist, too. Or rolled parchments, maps, large magical diagrams, things like that. Because all of the magical knowledge, at least the majority of the magical knowledge, which is what this library is based up on, is magical theory, magical history, and history texts or the majority of what's in this library. But this library, at least the second one, was a gift, and it was very heavily curated. But all of that knowledge is thousands of years old at this point. So you're dealing with very old books, but there's still no printing press.
So basically what you did was you Googled how a tactile Google room looks.
If you want to put it that way, you could. I Googled what did Google look like in the 15th century, to which Google had no results. And my phone just came to life because I said Google too much. But yeah, that's basically what I did. And I went down a very deep black hole looking at everything from like concept art to actual images of real places. There's a theater, I think it's in Venice, like an old, crazy, ornate theater that has since been turned into a bookstore. And that's just like a writer's wet dream. Just looking at that place is amazing.
I bet.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I love going to bookstores, and I love going to, older ones that have, been there forever. And I'll try to Google something more interesting for next time. I said that 3 times ago, but I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay. Don't just Google for the sake of Googling, though.
Fine.
It has to have a purpose. You can't just type in weird shit.
Says you.
I mean, you could type that in. I would not recommend it. All right, guys. I think that about wraps us up for today. Thanks for joining us. If you are a writer and would be interested in potentially joining us on the show, feel free to shoot us an email at whysouthisUp@gmail.com, and we will be sure to get back to you about that. We are looking to pull guests into the show as things progress.
Yes, we are.
And would love to hear from you.
Come on.
If you want to come play this game with us.
Come play this game with us.
Yes.
We need, yes.
Yes. Come play this game. It'd be a lot of fun.
Or send in your what if question. Send in your what if question, too.
Oh, yep. Send in what if questions. Send us your weird Google search that you had to do for your book. We're happy to share anyone else's experience as well.
Well, I'd rather share their experience than mine, but yes.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I'm Derrick Hall, and you can find me at derrickHallAuthor.com or on most social at dhallauthor, with the exception of Instagram, which is author_Derrick_Hall.
And I'm Xtina, Xtina Lefebvre, and you can find me at uniquelyxtina.com or on TikTok, Facebook at uniquelyxtina, uniquelyxtina. And thank you for listening.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye.